Sophia, we are now live on YouTube.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Neighborhood Opportunity Fund information session. We're going to be starting momentarily at around 12:05 to allow for some folks to join us, some more folks to join us. So feel free to step away if you need to, grab a drink or stretch, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, it's about 12:05. So again, I want to welcome everyone and say good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Neighborhood Opportunity Fund information session. We are going to go ahead and get started, but first I want to take a moment to introduce our team. I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Sophia Carey, and I'm with the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development. I help manage the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund Small Grants Program. For today's session, I will be moderating the Q&A, which will be at the end of the presentation. As you listen to the speakers, please feel free to send your questions through the Q&A feature that is on Zoom. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. We will answer some questions in writing through the Q&A, but some of the more common questions we will save to be answered live at the end of the presentation. Next, I'd like to introduce Mary Kuhn. Mary, if you want to say hello and give everyone a wave.
Welcome. Hi, everyone.
Mary, thank you, Mary. Mary is also with DPD and helps run the program as well as interface with our technical assistance advisors that are part of the NOF program. Next, I'd like to introduce Ruben Waddy. Ruben, if you want to say hello and give a quick wave.
Hello, everybody. Very nice to see you all here.
Yeah, Ruben is the NOF director with an organization named Summer Corps. And Summer Corps is the organization that helps DPD administer the NOF Small Grants Program. And if you are one of the grantees for the program in the near future, you will get to know Ruben very well, in addition to myself, Mary, and Jim, as you will be interfacing with the entire team as we help you get your project completed and across the finish line. Finally, I'd like to introduce our fearless leader, Deputy Commissioner Jim Harbin. Jim helps oversee not only the NOF program, but also the Invest Southwest initiative and the neighborhood planning teams at DPD. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jim, who's going to get us started on the presentation today. Jim, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophia. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Jim Harbin, and I'm a Deputy Commissioner here within the Department of Planning and Development, and want to welcome each of you to 2021's first round of the NOF application period. We recognize that 2020 was a difficult year for all of us, but as Chicagoans, we are resilient. And it is with that spirit of resiliency that we prepare to launch this year's program by providing much needed resources to our residents and small businesses to bring opportunity and hope back to our communities. We have a lot to cover today. So with that, why don't we just go ahead and get started? Next slide. So there's 7 items that we want to focus on today. And the very first one is literally giving a quick overview of what the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund is. I know many of you on the call are already familiar with the program, but we still want to reiterate what the program is, what that vision is for the program, and certainly introduce it to new people on the call today. We also want to go over who is eligible for the program and what kind of expenses are eligible for the program. We consistently get questions regarding these 2 issues, and we want to make sure that that's clear whenever at the end of the call today. We also want to walk you through the application process, just understanding some of the nuances of connecting to this resource, and then give you a hint in terms of how the grantees are selected and some of the things that we'll be looking for as we review the applications. And then finally, we also want to talk about, one of the things that my mom always told me is that money comes with instructions. And one of the things we want to make sure we're clear on is what are some of the requirements and restrictions in terms of connecting to this program. And then finally, how does one get paid once they're selected? And we want to make sure that that's absolutely clear as we finish up today. Next slide. So I think it's important to note that this program's vision has been consistent since its inception in 2017. And the key takeaway here is we obviously want to have strong and vibrant commercial corridors throughout the city. But this program, make no mistake about it, is focused on the south, southwest, and west sides of this city that have historically seen disinvestment over the past quarter century. We want to make sure that that vision stays consistent on our watch. And what we want to do is to make sure we help businesses, particularly in those geographies, learn how to better connect with this resource. Next slide. So what is the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund? Quite simply, it's a grant and technical assistance program. And don't ignore the technical assistance component here that helps neighborhood businesses renovate and build the commercial spaces they need to operate and serve local residents. The primary goals of this program are to support commercial development led by local resident entrepreneurs seeking to build wealth for and in their communities. We also want to attract commercial and cultural amenities. And again, don't ignore the cultural component of what we're looking for in terms of applicants. The cultural amenities to enhance quality of life in neighborhoods that have experienced a decline in private investments, which contributes to inequity and poverty. And then finally, we want to provide resources to to ongoing economic development initiatives, like plans that have already been conducted, already been produced by neighborhoods and communities, and make sure we're helping to support that. Next slide. So where do these funds come from? Well, contrary to popular belief, this fund does not have an endless supply of resources. What we do and what we have done, we have literally tapped into the amazing and breathtaking growth that the Central District of Chicago has been experiencing over the last quarter century. And what we've done is we literally have asked developers who are looking to increase their density and increase their opportunities to provide more revenue building components to their development to pay into the fund to increase that density over and beyond what the local zoning suggests. And as a result, those fees trickle down into 3 buckets. The first bucket is the local impact fund, which is literally a fund that helps take care of infrastructure in and around the development itself. There's also a bucket in this 10% that is provided to adopt landmark fund that helps support and renovate existing landmarks in the city. And then 80% of those dollars go into the neighborhood opportunity fund that is designed to help support businesses on the south and southwest sides and west sides of Chicago. It's important to note that unlike most of the other city financial incentive programs, the NOF program is not funded by local property taxes. Next slide. So we also use partners to help us support this program. The NOF program works with local community organizations, government officials, and small business owners to support the applicants and their projects. And we do that by making sure, A, there's assistance in terms of making sure we get the word out. And looking at the call today, there's almost 200 people on the call. So we're leaning in the right direction. We're trending in the right direction in terms of making sure people are aware of this program. But make no mistake about it, there are still others out there, other entrepreneurs, other businesses that still have not connected and know what this program is about. And we want to utilize community partners to help us do that. We want to have partners also help us identify projects that align with the local community needs. And we also want to provide project planning and application coaching to the applicants. And that's the one that we really are highlighting and have been highlighting over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. There is support for applicants in terms of planning and executing their projects and also simply applying for the program itself. Next slide. So here's just an example of some of the previous grantees. And as you can see, there is a myriad of different type of projects that the NOF program has supported. There's a grocery store on the 1500 block of Kedzie. There's an art gallery at Lake and Kedzie. There's a coffee shop in Bronzeville at 47th Street. There's actually a bar that is set up, and I can't see that address, at 2553 South Ridgeway. And then there's actually a dental office on 87th Street in the Auburn Gresham area. So, you know, people ask what kind of businesses are eligible. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, but we also are looking for innovation. So, you know, part of the reason we have these info sessions today is to make sure that there's a venue and a platform for these type of questions to be asked and answered. So with that, the next step is to really get into the weeds in terms of how one becomes eligible for this program. And with that, I'm going to get help from my colleague, Mary Kuhn, who's going to walk you guys through that process. Mary, are you ready to take it over?
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about eligibility. So who is eligible for NOF? So for NOF, you can be a property owner or a tenant. If you're a property owner, then we need to know what type of business is going into your space. It's very important that there is going to be a business there. That's what we're trying to bring to the community. If you're a tenant, we just need to know that the landlord is okay with the project. So we're going to ask you for some written approval from the landlord. Nonprofit organizations are also eligible, but they need to be doing some type of activity that's generating revenue. So for example, it might be a nonprofit that opens up a cafe or is running a theater and they're charging money for tickets. So those would count as making money or providing revenue. And the project must be within the qualified investment area. And we'll talk about that in the slides. So who is not eligible? Unfortunately, residential properties are not eligible. Manufacturing, social services, workforce development, schools, daycare centers, and also churches and places of worship. So churches and places of worship by themselves are not eligible. If they are doing a commercial activity, then they could be eligible. Same with the social service organizations. There could be some exceptions. If they are doing a commercial activity, they might be, but just as a standalone social service organization, they wouldn't be eligible. So let's talk about the types of projects. So you might be a business owner that is expanding or renovating, that would be eligible. You could be opening up a new location. That's also could be a great project. Could be, we do have some projects that are new construction, might be a vacant property and building a brand new building. We've had projects like that. Acquisition can be supported by the grant, but the grant cannot be used for just acquisition. It would have to be a larger project like a renovation or some type of construction. We have two tracks in the grant program. We have the small grants program, and the staff today, that's what we all work on. And those are grants up to $250,000. It's very competitive, the process to receive one of those grants. And the expectation is that you will complete those projects within 2 years. We have a 2-year timeline for completion for those projects. We also have a large grants track, and those are grants greater than $250,000. Bigger projects, they have to go through city council, and they also have other requirements they have to follow, like the minority and women construction requirements, and there are more requirements for the large grants track. We're going to focus on small grants today in our presentation. I think we have some contact information for the large grants if people are interested at the end of the presentation. Okay, so what can NOF pay for? We can pay for minor site improvements as long as it is part of a larger project that is eligible. Building acquisition can be paid for. It'll be part of the cost of the project, and we can get more into that probably in the Q&A. Folks usually like to hear about the acquisition. Just acquisition alone is not going to be eligible. Again, it has to be part of a larger project that includes renovation or construction. We could pay for security, roofing, soft costs like architectural fees or engineering fees, and then HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Those are very common things that our grantees do in their projects. So what is not allowed? Travel, operating expenses, those things are not allowed. The grant has to go towards the building and the construction or renovation of the building. We can't pay for residential uses, and the minor repairs by themselves are not going to be eligible. Okay, so let's talk about the qualified investment area, or QIA. So this is the area that is eligible for NOF, and these areas were selected based on US Census data. Jim mentioned before, these are areas that have been disenfranchised and have not seen the investment, and that's why we're focusing on them in this program. And some of the factors they looked at are the number of people living below the poverty line, education rates, percentage of people unemployed. But this is the QIA, and this is a basis for the eligibility for NOF. And we have 3 different types of corridors within the QIA that are eligible for NOF. We have eligible corridors, priority, and Invest Southwest. Eligible is kind of our baseline corridor. So you have to be located on an eligible corridor to be eligible within the QIA and on an eligible corridor. Our priority corridors are going to have a little bit more weight than the eligible, and then Invest Southwest has the most weight. And that's kind of what we're focusing. And the reason we have these different corridors is that we want to see a concentration of the investment and, put the grant dollars in the places where businesses are already operating, and then it makes sense. And you can go to our website to check an address to see if it's eligible. We'll cover that in these next slides. So chicago.gov/NOF, that's our website. And in the yellow on the map there is the QIA, the Qualified Investment Area. And then you can enter a project address into our map to see if it's eligible. It'll tell you if it is eligible. This one is on an eligible corridor, so it is eligible. And then next, you're going to do the project readiness quiz. So this will be multiple choice questions. You don't need to, get anything ready to answer the questions. And this is just a way for us to assess if you're ready to apply for the NOF program. You can come back if you, want to take this quiz, see where you are, and maybe, the quiz will give you some feedback on the areas you need to work on. Maybe you'll go away for a couple of weeks, work on things, and then you can come back to it. If you are not ready for the program, the quiz is going to direct you to our community partners. You can work with them to strengthen your application. If you do get through the quiz, then it will direct you to go to our full application. You'll get a code, and then you'll move on to our full application. We have a section on our website for the community partners that I mentioned. They can help you with the applications. And then once you are successful with that quiz, you're going to get the code, and you're going to go to, it's called submittable.com. That's the tool that we use for our full applications. So you're going to go to that website. You do need to create, if you don't have an account already, it's free. Create an account on there, start your application. You can save it as a draft and come back later. Our application is there. It is somewhat lengthy, and we're gonna ask you for a lot of details on your project, but it's all good, necessary stuff. So we're gonna ask you about your site control, if you have a lease, if you own the building. We're gonna ask you for photos of the building, the inside, the outside, the street. Bids, if you have those, are gonna really help your application. If you have any drawings, those are great to submit too. And then we're gonna ask you how you're gonna pay for the project. There's a portion of the project that you're gonna need to cover, and Ruben will talk about that in the next slides. But we'll ask you, if you have a loan, if you have some money saved up, we're gonna ask you for some documentation on that. And the application is online, and it turns off automatically on our deadline, and we'll post all that information online, but we can't accept any late applications. It does turn off, and it's just no longer available after that time. So just remind you to submit early, and please submit by the deadline. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ruben.
Thank you, Mary. All right, let me just go ahead and turn on my video. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how the grantees are selected, how finalists are selected for the program. So as we've already alluded to, the NOF program is highly competitive, very, very competitive. I do want to emphasize that. And every application round, we receive hundreds of projects. So due to limited funding, we have to make sure that we're selecting projects that have a certain readiness factor to them, like a shovel-ready factor to them, to make sure that they're pretty much ready to go if we were to select them. So we evaluate this readiness in 4 key areas, and this is important, so I definitely want you to make note of it, and also we'll make this information readily publicly available. So first and foremost is your project readiness. So as in from the day that you apply, or the day that you're selected, I should say, how quickly can you actually start the project, as in break ground on the project? Do you have site control? Do you have a lease? Do you own the site? Are you closing on the site? Or where are you at in negotiations with the landlord for leasing or buying the property? We also gauge your financial feasibility to make sure that you have an itemized budget and that you have an understanding of how much each component of the project costs. And then we'll also gauge whether or not you have the funds available to pay for your portion of the project, or if you are going to be able to obtain the funds throughout the life of your NOF project. For the construction plan, we're going to look over whether or not you have a construction project timeline from the, and including the application, really, from the moment that you applied to the moment that you break ground to the moment that you open up or reopen the facility, whether you're a startup or existing. a ribbon cutting of sorts. So how long will that take? What does that timeline look like? That's the thing that we look at, and we take into determination as we're selecting grantees. And also, if you have preliminary designs or bibs to substantiate the project cost, that would be very nice to send along with your construction plan. And finally, the catalytic impact, which is what the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund is primarily about. So how will this project impact the local community, and what benefits will you be bringing to the community? And does it align with the neighborhood's community plan and goals? These are things that are easily overlooked, but focusing on them can really help your application to stand out. Because keep in mind, this is a very competitive grant application process. Next slide, please. So we have two options for building community wealth for those that are looking to build upon their base grant amount of 50%. And keep in mind, you can stack these bonuses if you'd like. You don't have to choose between one or the other. The first one is the most straightforward local residency bonus. So NOF grantees who maintain a primary residency, so not your business residency, your permanent address. But if those are one and the same, then that's fine too. Those that maintain their primary residency within the NOF QIA may apply for a bonus that increases the maximum grant amount from 50% to 75%, because the bonus itself adds 25% on top of your grant amount. This is a bonus that you receive in the form of a reimbursement or payment to a contractor throughout the life of the project. So it is received as you are performing your project. The next one is local hiring, which is a little different from local residency. So just like local residency, you receive up to 25% in a maximum, in addition on top of your base grant. So again, it brings your grant amount from 50% to 75%. Or if you're stacking both, it brings it from 50% to 100%. But the difference between local residency and local hiring is that local hiring is paid out after the project is done. And this is paid out when you demonstrate that you hire 2 or more full-time equivalent employees whose primary residency is in the NOF QAA. So we're not looking for employees that live in Indiana or live in Rosemont or something like that. They actually have to live within the same boundaries that define the NOF QIA area. And again, these are reimbursed for wage expenses. This is, again, I want to emphasize, this is paid out after the project is done. So you can't get reimbursed for local hiring while the project is going on. The project does have to be complete, but local residency can be received throughout the life of the project. Next slide, please. So let's go over a quick example of how much grantees will receive. I do want to keep in mind that the maximum award amount for small grants is $250,000, which is what we're really talking about today, the NOF small grant. There is another NOF large program. This is the NOF small program. So small grants can receive up to $250,000. But keeping in mind what we just spoke about with the 2 bonuses, let's look at how that financial pie would look like. And let's use $100,000 as an example. So let's say your total project costs are $100,000. Your base grant amount for all eligible project costs is going to be 50% of your total project costs. And in this case, it would be $50,000 because that's half of, or 50% of $100,000. If you maintain your primary residency within the NOF QIA, you can receive an additional 25% throughout the life of the project. So you take the base grant amount of $50,000 and then add 25% of $100,000 or $75,000 or $25,000, sorry, to get $75,000. Just to make sure I'm saying that correctly, you add your base grant amount of $50,000, add $25,000 to it for the local residency bonus to get $75,000. While the project is going on, your portion to the minimum contribution you have to make is 25% of total project costs or $25,000. But let's say you qualify for the local hiring bonus and the local residency bonus. You can also receive the local hiring bonus of 25% or $25,000 after the project is done. But keep in mind, this is paid again after the project is done. That's why it resides off of the bar, so to speak. So once the whole yellow bar project that you see there is complete and you qualify for local hiring, you will receive the local hiring bonus after the project is complete. Next slide, please. So what can you expect as a grantee moving through the program? If you are selected for the program, the first stage that you start with is the finalist stage. So this takes about 3 to 6 months, and you're basically submitting verifying documents, documents that help verify your project readiness. So we're going to ask you to submit some legal documents, finalize your project scope, as well as close on other things as it pertains to your project, so that we can move on to the next stage. The next stage, and that stage would be the grantee stage that lasts about 12 to 18 months. So after you complete the finalist stage and you receive what's called the conditional award letter, which is a really important letter, you can then start your project. And you'll be recognized as a grantee. So during this phase, we expect the project to be complete in about 12 to 18 months. And we expect your business to be in operation, of course, upon completion of the project. And then finally, we have the alumni portion. So once you receive your entire grant amount and the project is complete, and if you qualify for the local hiring bonus, that's been paid out already. We're going to check in with you to make sure that you've maintained your business or ownership of the property, or both, by completing an annual survey. Basically, we're just checking in with you to make sure you're in compliance with the NOF. So again, 3 to 6 months for the finalists, 12 to 18 months for the grantee, and then 3 years for the alumni. And what we're really looking at here is at least a 2-year timeline, or at most, a 2-year timeline to complete the project. Of course, we would like to see it finished sooner, but that's the sort of timeline that we're looking at as a grantee. Next slide, please. So there's a few ways the grant can be paid out throughout the life of the project. And they can be paid out in either the finalist, grantee, or alumni stages that I just alluded to. In the finalist stages, you can request a reimbursement for eligible pre-development costs that were incurred within a reasonable timeline of the moment that you're selected for the program. And reasonable is normally defined as 6 months. So once you've provided the legal verification that I talked about, once you've cleared city scofflaw, and once we can confirm that you have site control and have paid off your property taxes, if you've incurred eligible pre-development costs, including architectural and engineering fees and permit fees, as well as whatever other associated soft costs that would be eligible within there, you can request a reimbursement for that for 75% up to $25,000. So that's how you can receive grant in the finalist stage. In the grantee stage, once the award letter is issued, this is where you'll be receiving a majority of the funds. You can either receive the funds through reimbursement or construction escrow. So whereas in the finalist stage, you can only receive a reimbursement or a rebate, in the grantee stage, you can receive a rebate for your project costs, or you could put your money in a construction escrow and then have us pay the contractor. Again, this is where a majority of the funds are going to be dispersed, and it's either going to be a direct check that we cut to you for you having paid the contractor, or once we verify that you've placed the money that we need you to place into the escrow account, we'll place our money into that account, and then we will pay the contractor from there. And that's how the grant is paid out in the grantee phase. And finally, in the alumni phase, the way to get paid out here is through reimbursement via the local hiring bonus if you decided to opt for it. And as long as you're in compliance with the rules of the local hiring bonus, as in the 2 full-time equivalent employees, living in a QIA, as well as some other metrics that we're going to look at, we will cut you a check for those wage expenses up to 25% of the total project costs. Next slide, please. So how are you supporting during the program? Because there's, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of difficulties and challenges that might come up But of course, you won't be working on this in a vacuum. There is going to be a universe really of support, a whole support system dedicated to helping you finish out the project. So we have a technical assistance program that includes verified lending coaches, architects, and construction managers that you can elect to hire to complete the project. It's not mandatory for you to solicit their services, but if you find yourself struggling in a key area during your time as a finalist or a grantee, you can check out the lending coaches, architects, and construction managers to see how they might be able to address certain pain points. Concierge support. So this is where city staff will be able to help and support and answer questions specifically regarding building permits, construction timelines, inspections, business licensing, and other pertinent matters. Because again, there's a lot of these projects all have to be done legally, of course. And so we understand that it could be challenging to go through the system of permitting and licensing. Again, you're not going to be in a vacuum with this. We do have city staff on hand to help out with these things, to help you decipher the system, so to speak, and to make these systems easier to understand, comprehend, and therefore execute. And finally, marketing. So whenever you have a groundbreaking ceremony or ribbon cutting, or something else that you would like to highlight, we definitely ask that you let us know, and we'll of course reach out to you so that we can market the business, market the project, the groundbreaking, and then market the opening or reopening or just completion of the project. We want to make sure that you're getting the proper exposure, for all the hard work that you've done at this point. So we'll definitely help out with the marketing as well. Next slide, please. So just to summarize what we've talked about today and go over some of the next steps. So we encourage you all to work with community partners, and that list is on our website again, in order to develop strong and competitive projects. We highly encourage you to reach out to them as soon as possible. You should really start working on your applications right now. I'm not saying you should submit them as quickly as possible. I'm saying that you should start thinking about your application and then building it up over time and doing it with the assistance of community partners that have seen many applications at this point. So they'll be able to help you out tremendously. But before you can apply, you must complete the project readiness quiz. This is important, so just make sure to follow the prompts on the project readiness quiz. And keep in mind that if the project readiness quiz does not allow you to go through with the rest of the application, that doesn't mean you can't ever apply again. It just means that there are pain points in the application that should be addressed. And again, your community partners can definitely help out with that. Applications must be submitted online. No late or hard copy applications will be accepted. Again, no hard copy applications. We still get a few sent in every now and again. That's not the way to do it. Everything is online. If you're having technical issues, again, community partners, you could always reach out to me as well. Let me know if there's an issue of just accessing anything. But if you are having technical issues, an alternative would not be to submit a hard copy application. The alternative is to reach out to somebody to help you out with that technical issue so that we can get that addressed for you and that you can move on with the application. And finally, this online application is only for small grants. This whole info session is really only for the small grants, so a maximum of $250,000. So please keep that in mind. And just again, to reemphasize, you should start planning your projects now, planning out your applications, and planning on reaching out to a few individuals, maybe many individuals, to see how you can strengthen your application. Next slide, please. And this is the general contact information for the two major parties associated with the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund versus the Department of Planning and Development, who have put together this presentation. That's their address there, as well as their website. And then if you have questions for the small grants track, please reach out to nof@cityofchicago.org. If you have questions about NOF large, you're just going to do NOF-large@cityofchicago.org. Again, those are two different grant programs. You want to make sure that you send the right question to the right email address. And then Summer Corps, of course. That's our address, that's our phone number. You can visit our website for information about other financial offerings that we have. And then, of course, for general NOF information, and I encourage you all to look at this website and read it through very carefully, chicago.gov/NOF. Those are the resources that you will be utilizing in order to help understand the program and to and to see what some proper next steps for you will be. Next slide, please. So yeah, we'll kick it off for questions now. Thank you, everybody. Really do appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Ruben. And thanks, everyone. We have had some really great questions coming through. So I'll go ahead and start reading these out loud shortly so that our presenters, Jim, Mary, and Ruben, can take turns answering them. But before we go into the Q&As, just wanted to mention some of the key dates, which we've seen some of the questions come up in the Q&A. Our first round, so this is our next application round, will begin on Monday, March 8th. So that is this coming Monday, and it will go until April 9th. So that is the deadline for this round. If you miss the April 9th deadline, you don't get your project planned sufficiently enough to submit an application, or you just happen to miss it for some other reason, no worries. We are planning a second round this year that will come out sometime in the third quarter. We don't have an exact date set for that yet, but if you are signed up for our email list, you will hear about it as soon as we have that date set. So again, the dates for the next application round are March 8th to April 9th. That is the deadline, April 9th. And if you missed that, we will have another round coming up later this year. So with that said, I'll go ahead and start with some of the questions that we have had, and I'm actually going to go to the some of the earlier questions that I've seen get repeated, because I think it's good for us to kind of unpack it and delve into it a little bit more. So first question is this grant program applicable to someone who doesn't have a commercial property space for their small business yet, but is looking to receive funding to buy one soon? Someone want to take that?
Yeah, Sophia, I'll take a stab at that one. So 2 things to keep in mind. One, the program has been open since 2017. And early on in the program, we were literally helping people get through the application processes, and we're looking for people to have completed applications and making sure that they understood that, being able to at least identify where a potential site should be or could be was on the application. Circle back now to 2021, particularly 2020, people have gotten more sophisticated and people are more educated about this grant program. So I think we had almost 400 applications in our last round in 2020. And people are identifying sites, they're demonstrating that they have leases, they're demonstrating that they have deeds. And we are signaling, as we're signaling today, that we're looking for those businesses that are ready now. So to answer that question, and I hope I'm doing a good job here, is to suggest if that site has not been identified to the point where there may be a letter of intent, there may be an owner who has signed a particular contract or has signed a lease. Unless you are at that point, we strongly suggest that you wait to the next round to put yourself in a better light. Because what we're doing is we're looking at all of applicants across the city of Chicago, and we are literally telling the small business community on the west sides, on the south sides, on the southwest sides, if you're ready, this program is ready for you. We're not necessarily looking for speculation, if that makes sense. We want to make sure you're ready. And by the way, we have support. Until you get there, we will connect you to either a community partner or to our staff and help you get to the point where you're ready. But until then, this program is now looking at applicants who have learned how this program works and who have went through their due diligence to set up those details that I just suggested and really want to be in the hunt, not based on having a complete application, because many of you have done that, but now how does it impact the community? How is it providing jobs? We're literally using those metrics now to make decisions.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Here's another question. I love how simple it is, and I think this should be an easy answer. Is this program for general contractors who want to fix and flip property in the Lawndale area?
I can answer that one. So the NOF finalists and grantees hire contractors through their projects, but the program is not for the contractors per se. We have had some businesses, commercial businesses that are construction businesses that open, for example, like an office, and they receive the NOF grant to renovate their office space. You could apply as a grantee, but we don't give grants directly to contractors.
Great, thanks. There are a number of questions surrounding the topic of site control and how a potential applicant can provide evidence showing if they don't already have site control, kind of what a secure path to site control is. Jim, you had mentioned a letter of intent. You had mentioned contracts or letter of interest. Are there other items that we have seen that could also work for demonstrating a secure path to site control?
Yeah, Ruben, I think you could better answer that question given the number of applications you guys have seen and looked at those documents in detail.
Of course. So site control is really defined in two ways, those that have the firm site control and those that are looking to attain site control. So for those that have site control, the easiest way to demonstrate that you do would be to send a signed lease. We do look for the signatures on that lease, all the initials on the page, signatures at the back and all that. Blank leases that even have the right information still aren't valid. So signed lease, I do want to make that clear. A real estate, a deed, sorry, and there's many different deeds out there, so I'm just really going to keep it to deed. You're going to see a trustee's deed, a warranty deed, a quick claim deed. There's plenty out there. We're making sure that we're looking at deeds, not real estate contracts, by the way, not real. Those are different. Real estate contracts are different. We're talking about deeds. So for those that have firm site control, lease and deed. For those that do not have site control, as Sophia and Jim mentioned, there are a few documents that you can send over, but how you send them over and what they contain is very important. So letter of intents are very common for those that don't have site control. They can be a letter of intent to lease or a letter of intent to buy. You just have to submit whichever one fits your business, fits your project the most. But I do want to inform you that letters of intent to yourself are not valid. So a letter of intent isn't something on your own letterhead that you're writing saying, I, to use my name, Ruben Wadi, will be leasing out this property at some point, signed Ruben Wadi. That would not be a valid letter of intent. We're looking for a letter of intent that states, I, the landlord, do intend to lease out the property to applicant from this date to this date upon completion of submission of documents. That's a real letter of intent, one from the landlord or one from both the client and the landlord. Either way, something that has unique signatures. And then purchase and sale agreement if you're buying a property, a redevelopment agreement. If you're buying the property, specifically if it's city-owned property. And there's other ways that you can demonstrate it. If you really can't acquire any of those documents, then at the very least, if you can show some form of communication between the unit and the landlord, like emails, that'd be helpful.
Great, thanks. So we also got some questions that have to do with projects that might have already started before the application. So I'm going to roll them all into just a general, if you have already started on your project, but it is not complete, or you've halted it for some reason, will the NOF program help? Or will this program be able to assist in getting those projects completed?
I can take that one. The answer is yes, we can help complete those projects. We can help continue those projects, but we can only help with the reimbursement of expenses incurred after you receive a conditional award letter. We cannot reimburse for expenses incurred before receiving the conditional award letter. So while we do allow for this, the issue of timeline comes up because you have to really determine how much this impacts your project. Because if you do start your project and apply for NOF, there is going to be theoretically a waiting period for you to compile all these documents. That waiting period might directly conflict with the construction timeline that you came up with your contractor, and that can present numerous issues depending on how long the delay is. So while the answer is yes, you really should consider the impact it has on your timeline, and you should really and definitely keep note that we can't reimburse for costs incurred before receiving the conditional award letter unless they are reasonable pre-development soft cost pre-development expenses that are directly related to the continuation of the project.
Great. Okay, let's see what else. Let's see.
Sophia, can I talk about the type of businesses that are higher priority for the neighborhoods?
Yes, that would be great. And along with that, we received a question about how an applicant might learn more about the community plans for the neighborhoods that they're looking in, or how their project connects with the needs of the neighborhood. So yeah, if you could speak on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'll start with the community plans. If you go over to the Invest Southwest website, the Invest Southwest areas, which are all, I believe they're all within the QIA. You can see the plans there. You can also connect with our community partners, and they will have more information about those plans. Talk to neighbors, talk to folks around where you want to open, in the neighborhood where you want to open a business, and see what kind of businesses they would like to have. Think about what is lacking in the area. So just some very general things, it's going to be more specific to each neighborhood. But on the south, southwest, and west sides in general, there is a general lack of retail businesses, places to go shopping, grocery stores, places to buy healthy foods, healthier restaurants, not just fast food, but having a variety of different restaurants. Family entertainment, places to take your kids, especially once we get past this pandemic and we can go do those things. So those are different kinds of places that are priority for those neighborhoods. And that's part of the goal of this program, is to attract those amenities into the neighborhoods for the residents. So when you're working in your application, think about, what kind of service am I providing? If you can demonstrate that there isn't, your type of business, that it doesn't exist around that area, that's going to make your application a lot more competitive. Like, I'm opening up a healthy deli sandwich shop, and there are no sandwich shops for, 2 miles, a 2-mile radius around my site. That's the kind of thing that we want to see. And then if you can even, show in the community plan that your type of business is something that the neighborhood needs, that's going to really strengthen your application as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And I'm just going to add to that, speaking to the example of the neighborhood deli, it is important that grantees actually do the research and make sure that what they say in their application is true and correct. I'll just give an anecdote. We had an application a couple of years back where they made the statement that they were the only deli around, I think, for the 3-block radius. But one of the application reviewers noticed that when they looked on Google Street View, that there was a Subway 2 doors down from it. So if something like that occurs, could be a couple of things. One is the person, the applicant provided that information and didn't really look to see if that was true, or two, they didn't do their research, or they were making a statement hoping that the reviewers of the application wouldn't see the discrepancy. Either way, it wasn't good. So please make sure to do your research before making those kinds of statements. I see here, this is more of a statement, but I think it's worth our time kind of clarifying a little bit. This attendee said, the program appears to be a reimbursement program. You would need to have the money to complete your project and then get reimbursed if you are chosen. Can you guys unpack that a little bit and talk about kind of how that might be true or how that might not be true?
Sure. So that statement is partially correct, but there are there's a few things to add to that. So one, we do offer a reimbursement method for paying you out for costs that you've incurred if you do have the money available for the entire project. I do note that the money's not paid out when you're selected. It's paid out when you can verify that the work has been complete after receiving your conditional award letter. So if you're selected for the program, we don't cut you a blank check for a grant amount. I do want to make that clear. There is a process for you to get the grant funds. We did go over that a few slides back. But there's different ways for you to get your funds, but your funds don't come to you if you are selected for the program. So that's the first thing I want to clarify, but I want to also add to the reimbursement. So while we do have a rebate method, $100,000 as an example, and you're eligible for a $50,000 grant, you pay the $100,000 then to the contractor, and we give you $50,000. But saying you don't have $100,000 laying around, but you have $50,000 to cover the project, or if you're eligible for 75%, you have $25,000. Then you can do the escrow method, where you take your portion of the funds, put it into the escrow. Let's just assume 25% or 25,000. You take the 25,000, put it in the escrow. Then we take our $75,000, AKA your grant, and put it into the escrow. And instead of you paying the contractor $100,000, the escrow pays the contractor $100,000. So this means that you don't have to have $100,000 readily available for the project. So while we do things on a reimbursement basis, on a rebate basis, we also do things on an escrow basis. But again, to pay, in order for the contractor to be paid and in order for you to be compliant, everything must be done after receiving the conditional award letter if you're selected for the program. To clarify, if you're selected for the program, we don't just cut you a check right then and there to complete the project. There are a few steps you have to go through.
Yeah, great. Okay, so this is I love this question, and I think this is a good conversation to be having. This person asked, how would you protect from bigger private investors / developers being given the opportunity as a grantee over local business owners and residents whose projects might be less attractive as they might not be new construction or not have as much resources? Would you give priority to local residents or businesses applying over private investors not vested in the community?
That one's mine.
I knew you'd want to answer that, Jim.
Yeah, no, we actually have that language embedded into this program. We're looking for local entrepreneurs. We're looking to build wealth within the community. And just to circle back on what Ruben just described, you have $100,000 project. All you need to do is demonstrate that on the work that you're looking to do on your project, that you have 25% of it or 25,000. We're going to pop into an account the other 75. At the end of the day, whatever value comes as a result, that's equity for that owner. We want to help support that type of wealth building with this program. And yes, local entrepreneurs get weighted, far outweighted to the private developer that's coming from outside of the community. As a matter of fact, We literally call it, when you are in the community or hiring in the community, a bonus because we want to make sure that you are weighted more than someone coming from outside of the community, if that helps.
Yep, thanks, Jim. Here's a good question. Can the funds be used for acquisition of city-owned property?
It's another one I want to take. Yeah, when we first started the program, that is something we certainly were entertaining. And then we start looking at the logic behind it. We're going to give you a grant to pay for property that we already own. It just didn't jive. It just didn't make sense. And we saw that because those two activities are on two separate paths, it just complicated the process. What we found, and what makes more sense, is that if you have a project that happens to be next to some city-owned land and you are doing some redevelopment on that property, we can help support your project. And if you want to circle back to try to buy the city-owned land to help support your project in some way, shape, or form, we can help support that. But that would be from a different department and not necessarily our department. That makes sense. But the short answer is no, we do not have the grant program being used to buy property owned by the city of Chicago.
Great, thanks. We've gotten a couple of questions about the project readiness quiz, that quick kind of 8-question temperature check, if you will. Some of the questions involve how do you get to it? And then there's a follow-up question of why is that required to actually be able to start the actual application?
I can take that one. So our application opens on Monday, and we will have the link to the project readiness quiz posted by noon on our website. So stay tuned on our website. That'll be posted on Monday. So it's not available right now, but it will be on Monday. And what was the other part of the question, Sophia? Oh, why do we require that? So we are looking for shovel-ready projects. It is a very competitive program. Unfortunately, we have limited funds. So we want to make sure that you are ready to apply for the NOF program when you do the application. So that is why we require that quiz. And again, so I see a question, is there someone I could talk to for more depth? Community partners, we keep saying that over and over again. Please, we cannot do individual coaching on applications because we are part of the program. The community partners can help you, they can coach you. So please, our website is up here, chicago.gov/NOF, and our community partners are listed there. So please give them a call and have them help you. They are there to help you with your application.
Awesome, thanks. Let's see, what other questions do we have? If you have a question that hasn't quite been answered yet, or I feel like we haven't quite addressed it from your perspective, please go ahead and answer, type it into the Q&A section. We've got just a few more minutes for Q&A. Here's an interesting question. What if you are a contractor and the business owner / grant applicant? So I'm assuming that means, can you GC your own project?
Take that one. Yes, you can GC your own project. You know, if you are the business owner and the property owner and the GC, or combination of those, including the GC, then yes, you can still apply for and be eligible for the program, and you can GC your own project. However, we do have a requirement that you receive licensed bids from licensed contractors. So if you are bidding this out yourself, you still have to be a licensed contractor. You still have to use licensed subcontractors, and all of you need to be insured. This is primarily because we want to make sure that we're properly investing in the city, and also that you are qualified to have your name be put on a permit. Unlicensed contractors cannot receive permits. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at there. You still have to be a licensed contractor. You have to use licensed contractor, and furthermore, you still have to receive a second bid. So even if you are the GC, you know exactly what you want to do and exactly who you want to use, you still have to get a second bid as per the requirements of the program. So to summarize, the answer is yes, but you have to be a licensed and insured GC, and you have to still get a second GC bid, and you still have to follow all the proper permit requirements.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Speakers, are there other questions that you remember receiving that we haven't addressed yet that you want to just bring up?
Yeah, we have a question about the technical assistance. So the technical assistance, unfortunately, we can only pay for that once you are selected for the program. Feel free to reach out to our technical assistants. If you would like to hire them for their services, that will be at your own risk while you're applying. We won't be able to cover those costs, unfortunately. If you're selected for the program, then you may be able to be reimbursed for some of those costs if it's, I believe, within a 6-month period of when you applied. Community partners, they offer their services are free of charge. So please reach out to them. And the contact information is on our website, chicago.gov/NOF.
A part of a question that I want to address from earlier, I did type a response, but in particular, someone asked about fixing and flipping properties through NOF. The answer is no, this is not a fix and flip program. That's why we have a requirement for the applicant to either remain in the building or remain the owner or both of the building for 3 years after completing their grant program. But just to get on that question a little bit, this program is very specific towards not entertaining fix it and flip it projects. I just wanted to make that clear.
Great.
Sophia, can you talk about, we've had a couple of questions. We have a question here about somebody who is interested in taking vacant lots and turning them into community parks. Can you take that question? And also mobile businesses, like, are those eligible? Would a park be eligible? Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, so I guess the question that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about NOF is, what is the revenue generating portion of the activity? If it is just an open green space community garden that's not generating any revenues, then likely it is not going to be eligible for the NOF grant program. If even if it was considered a cultural asset for the neighborhood, it still needs to have some sort of revenue generating kind of operations to it. If it is a business that wants to expand and have a garden or some sort of community open space as part of their business space, that's slightly different. So for example, in one of the earlier rounds, we had an art gallery that did a public installation. So it was public artwork in a space that was right adjacent to their business. They fenced it in, people could go into it, and it was, something that the neighborhood could enjoy, but it was still tied to this art gallery space that was providing, that had a revenue generating portion to their activity. So, I did also see the question about the mobile business. So mobile businesses by themselves is just, there's not enough information to determine if it's eligible or not. I think the key here is to remember that the NOF program, the grant itself, is to help pay for physical space that a business uses within the NOF area. And with mobile businesses, it's really going to depend on what they're going to use that physical space for, right? So if it turns out that it's just a storage shed, then that or like a manufacturing kind of industrial use, that's not going to work. If it's just a parking lot, a concrete pad where you're going to park your vehicle, that is likely not going to be very competitive. But if it was some other type of operations that was happening in the physical permanent location that's tied to the mobile business, then we can look at it and see if that is something that could match to the community plan and the needs of the neighborhood.
We have a couple of questions about startups and nonprofits and the bonuses. Can I talk about those, Sophia?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So startups are eligible as well as existing businesses. For startups specifically, because the program is really competitive, we encourage you, if you do have a business plan, upload that. If you're opening a restaurant and you want to upload your resume, that's going to help us see that you have prior experience working in a restaurant. What is your plan to generate revenue, to make money in the space? As a startup, there's a little bit more to prove than with an existing business that might have a little, have tax returns and a little bit more of a track record. So your startups are eligible, and we do have startups. Every round we do select startups, but those are some of the pieces that you're going to want to think about to make your application stronger. For the financial piece, Ruben talked about earlier, our base grant is 50% of the project cost. So if your project costs $100,000, our base grant is going to cover 50% of those project costs, $50,000. And that can be paid out as a reimbursement, like Ruben said, or it can go through escrow. But half of that money is going to have to be your money, and half will be the program's money. If you are a local resident, if you live in that qualified investment area, you can get an additional 25%. So that means that 75% of your project costs would be covered, and 25% would be covered by you. So you're still going to need, for that $100,000 project, you're still going to need $25,000 to cover that in the project. So if you're using escrow, your money, $25,000 will go into the escrow, 75 of ours would go into the escrow and be paid out. We pay out as the project is completed. The local hiring bonus, that comes after the project is completed. And so that's why the minimum that you're going to have to cover is always going to have to be that 25%. It may be more if you're not a local resident, but we're going to look to make sure that you paid wages out to folks who lived within the QIA. They don't need to live in the same neighborhood. Let's say your business is in Inglewood. They don't have to live in Inglewood. They can live in Austin. It just has to be within that larger QIA area. And if you've paid out wages in those areas in that year after the project is completed, then you can receive that additional 25%. So up to 100, but that last piece is always going to be a reimbursement. And then, there was another question about nonprofits. Revenue requirements for nonprofits. So we don't have a specific revenue requirement for nonprofits. If you have tax returns, we'll ask you to upload those. So those can kind of help show the financial strength of your organization. We want to see that you're bringing something to the community, not just the grant as kind of like an add-on to, let's say you're operating programs in the neighborhood, like youth programs, education programs. Those are great. Of course, we love those programs. But how are you doing something that is going to make money? Like you're opening up a coffee shop, you are opening a theater, and you're charging money for tickets. Those types of things, not just renting out your space that you already have, once or twice a month. That's wouldn't really be something different than just your kind of regular nonprofit activities.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to add to that, the question of us understanding the revenue kind of generating portion of your business plan is really to see that you have a sustainable, path, right? That this is a business or a service amenity that is going to be available to the neighborhood residents for years on into the future, that and that you've thoughtfully strategize on how you can make sure that your business is sustainable and can be successful for the long term. So, that is the lens in which we're using to look at revenue generation. How are you going to be able to sustain your business without independently, without having to rely on public grants or subsidies, that sort of thing. I see there's a lot of questions about different types of business activity. So we're not going to really spend too much time on that, just because every opportunity is unique. I do see a question here about applying at more than one location. Ruben, do you want to take that one? Can a business apply for 2 different locations?
Thank you, Sophia. Yes. So the answer to that question, I actually would like to say, there might be a few of you that are thinking about, I could apply for this location, that location. I can apply for maybe 5 locations. The best way that I can answer that is to focus on the one property that you're really wanting to rehab, and putting all of your effort into that one application to make it as competitive as possible, because you tend to dilute the quality of applications the more that you send out, especially if you copy and paste information. So in theory, yes, you can apply for multiple addresses. You have to send separate applications for each address. You can't put multiple applications on one. You can't put multiple addresses on one application. If you do that, it actually won't be eligible. So if you did want to apply for multiple locations, you would have to submit multiple applications. But with that said, the best thing that I could advise would be to put all of your effort into one application, choose the building that best fits your project needs, and then submit an application based around that building. I think that would create a better application. And then furthermore, you can theoretically apply for multiple properties, but the chances of you getting selected for all the properties are astronomically low, just because of the competition factor and the limited funding. So if you're selected for one property, more than likely you would not be selected for another one. So the best thing to do would be to just submit that one application that you really want to do and putting all of your effort into that application. But you can submit multiple applications for multiple addresses.
With that, we are actually out of time. So before we go ahead and end the session, a couple of things. This is the first info session for this this upcoming round of applications. We do have additional info sessions on Monday next week. We have a Spanish one on both Monday and Thursday of next week. And then we have another info session the following Monday, so that would be the 15th, I believe. So feel free to join us on those if you feel like you want to send some more questions our way. This webinar is recorded, so we will post it on our website along with the presentation deck. So you will have access to this once we close the presentation. I think with that, Jim, did you want to say anything else before we close out?
Yeah, I can close this out. Just to reiterate what you suggested, we certainly would welcome anybody that you on the call to join us for upcoming information sessions. But more importantly, help us get the word out. Help us get people who haven't necessarily got an opportunity to participate in this one. Let them know that we're going to be doing at least 3 more in English and 2 in Spanish. And please let them get connected to this program. And then with that, I want to wish everyone good luck who will be applying, and also happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.